The environmentalist left is once again attacking Dr. Patrick Moore, this time trying to unperson him from a keynote speaking engagement about sustainability. And the radical left, well, they're doing it all in the name of balance. Dr. Patrick Moore, for those of you who don't know, is one of the original founders of Greenpeace International, the former president of Greenpeace Canada. He's also got a PhD in ecology. He's a practical environmentalist that does real, tangible things every day to make the world a cleaner place. And he's currently slated to be a keynote speaker at a sustainability conference called Reimagine 2020 in Regina, Saskatchewan in May, in that he has a signed contract with the city of Regina to be a speaker. And based on his credentials, Moore's the kind of guy you'd want to have speaking at your sustainability conference if you're into that sort of thing. The problem is, Dr. Moore doesn't believe that CO2 is the thermostat for global temperatures. And so he is currently in the process of being canceled by the censorious radical left and the academic left. However, there's no real distinction between those two groups anymore, is there? And I think Dr. Moore will be canceled because politicians in charge of these sorts of things are generally cowards who are too scared to defend the citizens' right to hear different viewpoints on things they care about. Just look at this headline from the Regina Leader Post. Climate change denier Patrick Moore to speak at Regina Sustainability Conference. The city of Regina is defending its decision to hire a well-known climate change denier to speak at its upcoming sustainability conference. You know, based on that headline, you know exactly where the rest of this article is going. Now, first, I don't want to speak for Dr. Moore, but I've never actually heard him deny climate. I've heard him state that he doesn't think CO2 is the climate criminal the government and activists want us to believe it is. Actually, Dr. Moore has this tweet he sent earlier this week that I think perfectly encompasses his stance on climate change. Do you realize calling me a PhD scientist a climate change denier is equating me to a Holocaust denier? Regina Leader Post. That is the only other common usage of the term denier. I'm not a mass murderer. I simply disagree that CO2 controls the climate. Clearly, you hate free speech. Okay, now let's go to that Regina Leader Post article about the controversy of allowing a dissenting scientist to speak in Regina, of all places, one of the most conservative cities in the conservative western part of Canada. Here we go. During a recent interview with Environment and Energy News, Moore criticized climate change and compared it to a cult religion. Moore isn't wrong. He knows this better than anyone else. Any cult purges the apostates from their ranks, which is exactly what the climate change doomsdayers are doing right here. It's what they did when they tried to rewrite Moore right out of history of Greenpeace after Trump mentioned Moore's past as a Greenpeace founder. I did a video at the time rebutting all the claims of radical environmentalists that were trying to erase Patrick Moore from the history of the environmental movement. He founded the environmental movement as we know it. Maybe my favorite part of the Leader Post article is this next part because it is so perfectly left-wing. It's got all the high points. Censorship of opposing ideas, the writing off of someone else's earned knowledge if it doesn't comport with a climate change agenda, and the expectation that the state must only pay for things in line with, quote, progressive values. Shannon Zakidniak, the founder of a local environmental organization called Enviro Collective, oh my God, two things I hate, environmentalism and collectivism, would like to see Moore removed from the agenda. The objective of this conference is to set the framework to make Regina 100% renewable by 2050. It is not helpful to have someone who disputes the science behind climate change being one of the prominent speakers at that event, said Zakidniak during a phone interview. She would like to see a better balance of keynote speakers, including those who have scientific credentials and represent progressive values. Oh, right. Here we are advocating for balance again by only telling one side of the argument. The left keeps using these words, but I don't think they have a clue what they mean anymore. And I mentioned right off the hop that Patrick Moore has a PhD in ecology. What other scientific credentials would you like him to have, Ms. Zakidniak? Now, according to this post from the Regina Solar Co-op, from when Shannon Zakidniak was hired as their new business manager, she has a master's in environmental studies and a bachelor's in journalism. So Zakidniak is a scientist, just like Moore. However, unlike Moore, she refuses to engage in rigorous scientific debate. She has also trained as a journalist, but she's advocating for censorship. And the city should only invite speakers that represent her progressive values. What about the values of everybody else in the city paying for this little event? Just no? What about those of us who don't end up laid out on a fainting couch because someone said something that we disagree with? Who appointed these busybody nannies in the environmental movement to protect the rest of us from different ideas? However, there's a great irony in all of this, in the fact that Greta Thunberg, basically a high school dropout, deeply troubled child actor being exploited by big money men and stage parents, I guess, just like every other child actor in Hollywood mostly, but she's the climate change expert the world needs right now, or so we're told. A Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Times Person of the Year. No doubt this sustainability conference would jump at the opportunity to have Ms. Thunberg speak to them and hector and scold them, like any other smart-mouthed teenager, I suppose. And a PhD in ecology? Well, he has no right to speak, even on matters of ecology. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Friends, have you heard? We're going on an Alaskan cruise, and we want you to come too, to see the beautiful ship that we're on, and to get all the details and to book your cabin. Go to rebelnewscruise.com.